Sleepy History, The Lost Library of Alexandria. Chapter 1, A Dream of All Knowledge. Welcome, dear traveler, to a journey through time. Let your breathing slow, your shoulders soften, as we drift together back through the centuries. You need not do anything at all, simply listen, and let the ancient world unfold around you like a gentle tide. Tonight, we travel to a place where the Mediterranean Sea kisses the northern shores of Egypt, where east meets west, where the desert yields to the endless blue horizon. We are going to Alexandria, the city of dreams, the jewel of the ancient world. Close your eyes now if you haven't already, and imagine with me. It is the year 331 before the Common Era. The sun hangs low over the delta of the Nile, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. A young man stands on a strip of land between the sea and a shallow lake called Merotis. He is barely 30 years old, yet already he has conquered the known world. His name is Alexander. Alexander the Great gazes out at the fishing village of Rakotis, at the gentle waves lapping against the shore, at the island of Pharos rising from the water like a promise. And in his mind's eye, he sees not what is, but what could be. He sees wide avenues lined with columns of white marble. He sees harbors filled with ships from every corner of the world. He sees a city unlike any that has ever existed, a bridge between continents, a meeting place for all humanity. With no chalk to mark his vision, Alexander does something extraordinary. He takes grain, simple barley, and sketches the outline of his city directly upon the earth. The wind catches some of the golden kernels, birds descend to feast upon his blueprints, and legend says this was an omen. A sign that his city would feed not just bodies, but souls. That it would nourish the hungry mind of civilization itself. But Alexander, restless as the desert wind, does not stay to see his vision realized. Within months, he departs eastward, chasing the sunset, pursuing conquest and glory. He will never return. He will die far from here, in Babylon, just 8 years later, still young, still dreaming. But his city, his Alexandria, will live for centuries. Let us move forward now, gently, softly, through the mists of time. The task of building Alexandria falls to Alexander's architects, to dinocrates of Rhodes and Cleomenes, but more importantly, it falls to one of his most trusted generals, a man named Ptolemy. Ptolemy, who will intercept Alexander's golden sarcophagus and bring it here to Alexandria. Ptolemy, who will declare himself pharaoh and found a dynasty. Ptolemy, who will transform Alexander's sketch in grain into a wonder. Breathe deeply, and step with me into the streets of Alexandria as it grows. The city rises from the sandy shore with remarkable speed. Wide boulevards stretch 60 meters across, wider than any streets in the known world. They are lined with colonnades that provide shade from the fierce Egyptian sun. The main avenue, the Canopic Way, runs east to west, following the path of the Mediterranean breeze that cools the city, that makes Alexandria unlike anywhere else in Egypt. The city is organized on a perfect grid, rational, ordered. Greek in its precision yet Egyptian in its soul. It sprawls across 4 miles, home to 400,000 souls, perhaps more. They come from everywhere. Greeks and Macedonians, Egyptians and Jews, merchants from Persia and India, scholars from Athens. Alexandria is a place where languages mingle like colors in water, where the gods of Egypt meet the gods of Greece and find common ground. In the harbor, the masts of ships create a forest of wood and rope. Some say the harbors can hold 1,200 vessels. They bring papyrus and grain, spices and silk, but most precious of all, they bring something that cannot be held in the hand. They bring knowledge. For Ptolemy I and his son, Ptolemy II, have a dream. Not a dream of conquest, like Alexander, but a dream perhaps even more ambitious. They dream of gathering all human knowledge, all wisdom, every text ever written, and bringing it here, to Alexandria, to be preserved forever. To house this impossible collection, they conceive of something unprecedented. They will build not just a library, but an entire complex dedicated to learning. They will call it the Mauseon, the Shrine of the Muses, those 9 divine sisters who inspire all human creativity. Music and poetry, history and astronomy, dance and sacred hymn. The Muses will watch over this temple of knowledge. The Mausian rises in the royal quarter, the Brutian, near the palace itself. It is not a single building but an entire district of learning. Imagine it now. Let your mind drift through its spaces. There are gardens planted with rare specimens, trees that cast dappled shadows over stone pathways. There are covered walkways where scholars debate under painted ceilings. There are dining halls where thinkers break bread together, sharing not just food but ideas. There are observatories where astronomers chart the movements of stars. There are laboratories where the natural world reveals its secrets. There are rooms for anatomical studies. For the first time in history, physicians are permitted to understand the human body by examining it directly. And at the heart of it all, the library. Rooms upon rooms of scrolls. Shelves climbing toward high ceilings. The rustle of papyrus. The scratch of reed pens on fresh sheets. The murmur of scholars reading aloud to themselves, for in the ancient world, even reading is a form of speech. The Ptolemies are obsessed with their library. They send agents across the Mediterranean with bags of gold, with instructions to purchase every text they can find. Plays and poems, treatises on mathematics and medicine, star charts and philosophical dialogues, histories of far-off lands. Nothing is too obscure, nothing too ordinary. They want it all. And they are not above trickery to achieve their goal. Every ship that enters the harbor of Alexandria is searched, not for contraband or weapons, but for books. If any manuscripts are found aboard, they are confiscated, taken to the library, copied by skilled scribes. Sometimes, the original is kept and the copy returned to the ship's owner, along with compensation for their loss. These texts are marked with a special label. From the ships, a badge of honor for stolen treasure. One story tells of Ptolemy III, who borrowed from Athens the precious original manuscripts of the great playwrights. Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides. To secure the loan, he paid an enormous deposit, 15 talents of precious metal, a fortune that could ransom a kingdom. But when the time came to return the originals, Ptolemy made his choice. He kept the manuscripts, sent beautiful copies back to Athens, and forfeited his deposit without regret. For what price can be placed on preserving the words of immortals? The library grows. 40,000 scrolls, 100,000, more. Conservative estimates suggest the collection reached hundreds of thousands of papyrus rolls at its height. The optimistic speak of 700,000, or even 900,000 texts. The truth is lost to time, but the ambition, the vision, that remains crystal clear. The Ptolemies dream of a library that contains all human wisdom, a repository where anyone who seeks knowledge can find answers. To organize this vast sea of scrolls, a scholar is appointed. His name is Callimachus, a poet and thinker from Cyrene. He creates something revolutionary, the first library catalogue. He calls it the Pinarches, the tables. He divides all knowledge into categories: natural history, poetry, law, rhetoric, medicine, mathematics. Each scroll is classified, described, given its place in the great system. Future generations will build upon Callimachus's work, but he is the first, the pioneer who brings order to the accumulated wisdom of humanity. The library is more than shelves and scrolls. It is a living thing. It attracts the brightest minds of the age. Scholars come from across the known world, drawn by the promise of royal patronage, free housing, communal meals, and most seductive of all, access to more knowledge than exists anywhere else on earth. They come, and they stay, and they make discoveries that echo through the centuries. But we will meet these brilliant souls in chapters to come. For now, let your mind rest in this moment of beginning. The library is young, the dream is fresh, the scrolls are still being gathered. Alexandria shimmers in the Mediterranean sun, a city of marble and papyrus, of harbor winds and scholarly whispers. The cooling north wind, the Etesian breeze, drifts across the water. It tempers the Egyptian heat, makes the summer bearable, carries the scent of the sea into the gardens of the Mausian. Palm trees sway gently. Somewhere, a fountain splashes. A scholar walks slowly through a colonnade, his mind on distant things, a text he read that morning, a problem he cannot solve, a question that keeps him awake at night. This is Alexandria in its golden age. This is the library in its youth, full of promise, full of possibility. A place where dreams take the form of words on papyrus, where the past is preserved, where the future is being imagined. And you, dear traveler, you have stepped through time to witness it. You have seen the grain scattered on the shore, the blueprint of an impossible city. You have watched it grow, watched the library take shape, watched the dream of universal knowledge begin to unfold. Chapter 2: The Minds That Dreamed. In our first chapter, we watched the library rise from dream to reality. We saw the scrolls arrive, the shelves fill, the catalogue take shape. But a library without readers is merely a tomb for words. Tonight, we meet the souls who brought those words to life. The scholars who walked the marble halls, who debated in the gardens, who stayed awake late into the night with oil lamps flickering, consumed by questions that had no easy answers. Close your eyes, and step with me into the Mausian on a warm morning in the 3rd century before our Common Era. The sun rises over the harbour, casting long shadows through the colonnades. In a study room overlooking the gardens, a man sits with a scroll unfurled before him. His name is Euclid. Perhaps you have heard of him, perhaps not. But every student of geometry for the next 2,000 years will study his work, will follow in his intellectual footsteps, will struggle with the same proofs he is now organizing with such care. Euclid taught at Alexandria around 300 BCE, during the reign of Ptolemy I. He is younger than the library itself, but already he has begun his greatest work. A book that will be called simply The Elements. 13 volumes that will organize all the known mathematics of his age into one coherent system. Imagine him now, this quiet man, methodical, patient. He is not inventing most of what he writes, but rather collecting and organizing mathematical knowledge from earlier thinkers. From Pythagoras and Thales, from Theaetetus and Eudoxus. But his genius lies not in novelty, his genius lies in clarity, in order, in the way he builds each theorem upon the previous one, like stones stacked to form an arch that will stand for millennia. He begins each book with definitions. What is a point? What is a line? What is a circle? Then come his axioms, the statements so obviously true they need no proof. Things that are equal to the same thing are equal to each other. The whole is greater than the part. From these simple foundations, these bedrock certainties, he builds upward. Step by careful step. Proof by logical proof. Legend says that Ptolemy once asked him if there were an easier way to learn geometry, a shortcut, a royal road. And Euclid replied simply, there is no royal road to geometry. Even kings must think. Even pharaohs must follow the logic where it leads. Let him work in peace. Let us move through the gardens now, past scholars debating under the shade of date palms, past a group of students copying scrolls with careful strokes, past the anatomical theatre where physicians study the mysteries of the human body. In another chamber, overlooking the sea, we find a different sort of mind. A man younger than Euclid, more restless, more ambitious. His name is Aristarchus, and he comes from the island of Samos. He arrived in Alexandria likely to study, and became a student of Strato of Lampsacus. Aristarchus is consumed by a question that seems simple but is actually profound. How far away is the sun? How large is the moon? These celestial bodies that govern night and day, that mark the seasons and the months. What is their true nature? What is their place in the cosmos? He writes a treatise called On the Sizes and Distances of the Sun and Moon. In it, he uses geometry, pure mathematics, to estimate these cosmic measurements. He watches the moon during a half moon, when it forms a right angle with the sun and earth. He measures carefully. He calculates. Though his tools are crude by our standards, Though he cannot see what telescopes will one day reveal, his method is sound. His thinking is clear. But then Aristarchus goes further. He begins to think about what he has discovered. The sun, his calculations suggest, is vastly larger than the Earth. Perhaps 18 times larger, perhaps 20. In truth, it is far larger even than his estimates. But he knows enough to realize something profound. If the sun is so much larger than the Earth, why should the Earth be the center of everything? Why should that massive burning sphere revolve around our small world? Would it not make more sense, would it not be more natural, for the Earth to revolve around the sun? And so Aristarchus proposes something radical, something that will not be accepted for almost 2,000 years. He suggests that the Earth rotates on its axis once a day, and revolves around the sun once a year. That the sun and the stars remain stationary while we, small inhabitants of a small world, orbit through the heavens. His colleagues are skeptical. If the Earth moves, they argue, why do we not feel it? If we circle the sun, why do the stars not shift position throughout the year? Aristarchus has an answer for this last question. He argues that the stars must be incredibly distant, so far away that the Earth's orbit is like a point compared to their vast remove. The universe, he suggests, is far larger than anyone has imagined. It is a beautiful theory, elegant, profound, but it is too radical for his time. The weight of common sense, the authority of Aristotle, the testimony of our own senses, all seem to argue against it. The Earth feels still beneath our feet. The sun appears to move across the sky. And so Aristarchus's heliocentric universe is noted, discussed, and then quietly set aside. The old geocentric model prevails. The Earth remains, in everyone's mind, at the center of all things. But his ideas do not die. They are recorded, preserved in the library, waiting patiently in the darkness of a scroll, waiting for Copernicus, waiting for a time when humanity is ready to accept its true place in the cosmos. Let us move forward now, through years, through decades. Let us find the library at its height, perhaps 50 years after Euclid, perhaps 70 years after the library's founding. The collection has grown vast. The scholars have multiplied. And now we meet perhaps the greatest mind the library will ever shelter. His name is Eratosthenes. He comes from Cyrene, born around 276 BCE, and becomes the chief librarian of the Great Library. A polymath in the truest sense. Poet, mathematician, geographer, astronomer, athlete, friend. His contemporaries call him Beta, the second letter of the Greek alphabet, because he is very good at everything but perhaps not the absolute best at any one thing. It is meant as gentle teasing, but perhaps it is also recognition. To be excellent at everything, to see connections between all fields of knowledge, this requires a different kind of brilliance. Eratosthenes reads everything. He organizes the library's vast collection. He creates improved chronologies of history. He draws maps of the known world. He writes poetry. But he is most famous, most remembered, for a single elegant experiment. A measurement so accurate that it will stand for centuries. One day, while reading in the library, Eratosthenes discovers a curious fact recorded in a scroll. In the city of Sine, far south along the Nile near modern Aswan, at noon on the summer solstice, the sun casts no shadow. A vertical stick stands in full light. The sun is directly overhead. But here in Alexandria, even at noon on the summer solstice, the sun is not directly overhead. A stick casts a shadow. Why? The answer comes to Eratosthenes like sunlight breaking through clouds. The Earth is curved. The Earth is a sphere. And if the Earth is a sphere, if he knows the distance between Alexandria and Sine, if he can measure the angle of the sun's shadow in Alexandria, then he can calculate the circumference of the entire Earth. It is audacious. It is brilliant. And it is completely achievable with nothing more than geometry and careful observation. On the summer solstice, Eratosthenes measures the shadow cast by a gnomon, a vertical stick, in Alexandria. The angle is about 7.2 degrees, roughly 1/50th of a full circle. Now he needs to know the distance to scene. He hires professional surveyors called beamatists, trained to walk with equal-length steps to measure the distance. They walk the long road south along the Nile, counting their paces, returning with their measurement. About 5,000 stadia, roughly 800 kilometers. Now comes the mathematics. If the difference in sun angle between the two cities represents 1/50th of a circle, and the distance between them is 5,000 stadia, then the full circumference of the Earth must be 50 times that distance. 250,000 stadia. Modern scholars debate the exact length of the stadia Eratosthenes used, but his calculated circumference comes remarkably close to the true value of about 24,900 miles around the equator. He has measured the entire planet using only shadow and sunlight, geometry and careful reasoning. Standing in Alexandria, he has embraced the whole world with his mind. Let this sink in. Let it fill you with quiet wonder. A man with no satellites, no instruments beyond a stick and his own observations, no way to actually travel around the Earth, nevertheless calculates its size with stunning accuracy. This is the power of mathematics. This is the power of human reason. This is what happens when curiosity meets knowledge, when questions meet wisdom. The library enables all of this. Without the scrolls, without the records of distant lands, without the accumulated knowledge of geometry and astronomy, Eratosthenes could not have made his breakthrough. And without the Ptolemy's patronage, without the freedom to think, to question, to spend years in pure inquiry, these minds could not have flourished. Walk with me now through the evening gardens of the Mausian. The sun sets over the Mediterranean, painting the waves gold and crimson. Scholars stroll in pairs and small groups, speaking quietly. Some debate philosophy, some discuss a difficult proof, some simply enjoy the cool evening air after a day of intense study. In the dining hall, they gather for the evening meal. Bread and oil, fish from the harbor, wine diluted with water, dates and figures. They eat together, these thinkers from across the world. Greeks and Egyptians, Jews and Phoenicians, men from distant lands whose names we will never know. They share more than food. They share ideas. A mathematician describes a problem to a physician. An astronomer learns from a poet. Knowledge flows between them like water finding its level. This is the true magic of the library. Not just the scrolls on the shelves, but the living conversation. The community of inquiry. The understanding that wisdom is not complete, that every generation adds to the edifice, that the purpose of knowledge is not merely to possess it but to build upon it, to pass it forward, to leave the world richer in understanding than we found it. After dinner, as the stars emerge, some scholars return to the observatory. They chart the movements of planets, they measure the positions of stars, they compile data that will be studied for centuries. Others return to their scrolls and lamps. There is always more to read, always more to learn, always another question waiting to be asked. And in the quiet hours before dawn, when even the most dedicated scholars have finally sought their beds, the library stands in darkness. Silent, but not empty. Those hundreds of thousands of scrolls remain, those thousands upon thousands of human thoughts preserved in ink and papyrus, waiting for the next curious mind, waiting for the next breakthrough, waiting to be woken by the questions of a new day. Rest now, traveler. Let your mind drift through the marble halls. See the scrolls in their cubbyholes, their edges marked with tags. Smell the papyrus, the oil from the lamps, the salt air from the sea. Hear the distant murmur of scholars debating, the scratch of reed pens, the rustle of unrolling scrolls. You have met three of the library's greatest minds tonight. Euclid with his love of order and proof. Aristarchus with his cosmic vision. Eratosthenes with his measurement of the world. But they are only three among hundreds, among thousands. Each one driven by curiosity. Each one adding their small light to the vast illumination of human understanding. Chapter 3. A Day Among the Scrolls. The morning begins before dawn. In the royal quarter of Alexandria, in the residences of the Mausian, scholars stir from their beds. They have been gifted something precious by the Ptolemies, something more valuable than gold. Freedom from worry. They receive free accommodation in comfortable rooms. They eat meals together at no cost. They are exempt from paying taxes. They receive a modest salary. All of this, so they can devote their lives entirely to the pursuit of knowledge. Imagine now, stepping into the sandals of a young scholar. Perhaps you have traveled here from Athens, or from distant Cyrene, drawn by tales of the greatest library in the world. You arrived months ago, carrying letters of introduction, and after demonstrating your knowledge, you were accepted into this community of thinkers. This is your life now. This is your home. You rise as the first grey light touches the eastern sky. Through your window, you can see the harbour beginning to wake. Fishing boats venture out into the Mediterranean. The air is cool, blessed by the north wind that makes Alexandria bearable even in the fierce Egyptian summer. You dress simply, a tunic, sandals. Scholars here do not need fine clothes. What matters is the mind. You walk through the quiet corridors toward the refectory. Other scholars are already gathering there, some rubbing sleep from their eyes, others already deep in conversation about a text they read the night before. The tables are set with simple fare. Bread, still warm from the ovens. Olive oil for dipping. Dates and figures. Fresh fish from the morning catch. Cheese made from goat's milk. Wine diluted with water, for even at breakfast, the Greeks prefer their wine softened. You sit beside an older scholar, a mathematician from Kos. He nods a greeting but says little. He is thinking about something, a proof that eluded him yesterday. You understand. Some mornings call for silence. Some mornings, the mind is already working. After the meal, as the sun climbs higher, you make your way to the library itself. The main entrance faces a courtyard filled with gardens. There are trees here that you have never seen before, brought from distant lands. There are statues of the Muses, the divine sisters who inspire all learning. You pass between columns of white marble, enter the cool shade of the library hall. Inside, the world transforms. The light is softer here, filtering through high windows. The air smells of papyrus, of the plant fibers that have been harvested from the Nile marshes, processed, pressed, and written upon. It is a smell you have come to love. The smell of knowledge preserved. The library is organized with extraordinary care. Shelves line the walls, rising from floor to ceiling in some rooms. But these are not shelves as we know them. They are more like cubbyholes, pigeonholes, each one housing a single scroll. And at the edge of each scroll, visible from the outside, hangs a small tag. A label identifying the work within. The author's name, the title, sometimes a few words describing the content. You have come here today with a purpose. You are researching the nature of light. How does vision work? Why can we see some things but not others? What is the relationship between the eye and the sun? These questions consume you. Last week, you read Plato's theory of vision. Today, you wish to see what else the library holds on this subject. You approach one of the librarians. For yes, there are librarians here. Scholars whose primary role is to organize and maintain the collection. They know the catalog system. They know where to find obscure texts. They are the guides through this vast sea of scrolls. You explain what you seek. The librarian nods thoughtfully. He is a man of perhaps 40 years, his hair graying, his eyes sharp with intelligence. He has worked here for 2 decades. He knows this library the way a shepherd knows his flock. He walks, and you follow, through a series of rooms. The library is larger than you first realized. There are multiple halls, multiple chambers. Some rooms are vast, with dozens of scholars seated at wooden desks, scrolls unfurled before them, reading quietly. Other rooms are smaller, private spaces where a single thinker can work undisturbed. The librarian leads you to a section dedicated to natural philosophy. His fingers trace along the tags, reading names, searching. He pulls a scroll from its cubby. The papyrus is carefully rolled around a wooden rod. He hands it to you reverently, for even here, in a library of hundreds of thousands of texts, each individual scroll is precious. This one contains a treatise on optics by Euclid, written perhaps 50 years ago, right here in Alexandria. You find an empty desk near a window. You sit. You place the scroll carefully before you. Taking hold of the wooden rod in your right hand, you begin to unroll. The papyrus unfurls from right to left, revealing columns of Greek text. The script is neat, written by a skilled scribe who copied this from an earlier version. Black ink on golden papyrus. Here and there, a word in red, emphasis, a heading. You begin to read. In Greek, even silent reading is often voiced. You whisper the words as your eyes follow them. The text flows. Euclid's clear, logical style guides you through his thoughts about how light travels in straight lines, how rays emerge from the eye to touch what we see. Time becomes fluid. Hours pass like minutes. Around you, the library hums with quiet activity. Somewhere, a scholar coughs softly. Paper rustles. A reed pen scratches against fresh papyrus as someone takes notes. Through the high windows, the sun moves across the sky, the light shifting, the shadows changing. But you barely notice. You are lost in thought. Lost in the text before you. When you reach the end of Euclid's treatise, you carefully roll the scroll back onto its rod. You return it to the librarian, who files it back in its proper place. But your research is not complete. You request another text. And another. The librarian brings you a scroll containing fragments of Democritus, the philosopher who believed that light consists of tiny particles. You read. You compare. You think. For scholars here often do more than simply read. They copy. They take notes. They create their own treatises. On your desk, you have several sheets of fresh papyrus. The library provides these, for a modest fee, or sometimes free for scholars in residence. You have a reed pen, cut from a plant stalk, its tip shaped into a fine point. You have ink, black ink made from soot mixed with water and gum. You begin to write. Your own thoughts, building on what you have read. Perhaps you disagree with Euclid on some point. Perhaps you see a connection between his ideas and those of Democritus. You write slowly, carefully. Papyrus is valuable. Each sheet is made through painstaking labor. Workers in the marshes harvest the tall papyrus reeds. The outer rind is stripped away. The inner pith is cut into thin strips. These strips are laid side by side, horizontal fibers forming one layer. Then another layer is placed crosswise, vertical fibers. The two layers are pressed together, moistened, pounded, dried in the sun. The natural plant sugars act as glue, binding the sheets together. You are grateful for each sheet. You do not waste words. Every sentence is considered. This is the way of scholars here. Precision, clarity, respect for the medium. As afternoon lengthens toward evening, you begin to feel the strain in your eyes. Reading by natural light for hours is tiring. You roll up the scroll you were examining. You collect your notes. You stand, stretching your back, rolling your shoulders. You have been sitting for a very long time. You walk through the library toward the exit. On your way, you pass through a room where several scholars are engaged in debate. They sit in a circle, their voices low but intense. One argues that the moon generates its own light. Another insists that the moon merely reflects the light of the sun. They cite texts. They reference observations. They listen to each other with respect, even in disagreement. This too is part of library life. The exchange of ideas. The testing of theories against the minds of others. You emerge into the late afternoon garden. The sun is lower now, the air cooling. The north wind still blows. gentle and constant. You walk slowly along the colonnade. Your mind is still full of what you have read. You barely see the garden, the trees, the statues. You are thinking about light, about vision, about the questions that still remain unanswered. The evening meal is served as the sun sets. You return to the refectory. The tables are more crowded now. The conversation is livelier. Scholars share what they discovered today. A geographer describes a new map he is creating. A physician discusses a surgical technique he read about in an Egyptian medical text. A poet recites a few lines he composed that afternoon, testing them against the ears of his colleagues. After dinner, some scholars return to the library. For the library does not close at sunset. Oil lamps are lit. Clay lamps filled with olive oil, wicks floating, casting golden light across the scrolls. The night shift begins. Some scholars prefer to work in the evening, when the library is quieter, when fewer people move through the halls. But you are tired. Your eyes ache from reading. Your hand is cramped from writing. You walk back to your residence. In your room, you light a small lamp. You sit on your bed. You think about tomorrow. There are more texts to read, more notes to take, more questions to pursue. And yet, despite the work that remains, you feel something close to contentment. You are part of something larger than yourself. You are contributing to human understanding. What you learn here, what you write here, may be read by scholars 50 years from now, 100 years, 200. Knowledge is not hoarded here. It is shared. It is preserved. It is passed forward like a torch in the darkness. You extinguish your lamp. You lie down. Through your window, you can hear the distant sound of the harbor, the gentle lap of waves, the creak of ships at anchor, the murmur of the city beyond the royal quarter. Alexandria never truly sleeps. But you do. You sleep knowing that tomorrow, you will return to the library. You will read. You will think. You will add your small contribution to the vast edifice of human knowledge. This is a day in the Library of Alexandria. Multiply it by hundreds of scholars. Multiply it by decades, by centuries. Imagine the accumulated hours of reading, of thinking, of writing. Imagine the conversations in the gardens, the debates in the halls, the breakthroughs, the discoveries, the moments when a scholar suddenly understands something that no one has understood before. The library is not just a building. It is not just scrolls on shelves. It is a living thing. It is the sum of all these days, all these minds, all these questions and answers. It is humanity's memory made tangible. It is our curiosity given physical form. Chapter 4: Wonders and Wisdom. In our earlier journeys, we met the philosophers and mathematicians, the stargazers and geometers. But the library attracted minds of all kinds. Practical minds, inventive minds, those who look not just to understand the world but to change it, to build, to create. Close your eyes now, and step forward through time with me. We arrive in Alexandria during the 1st century of the Common Era. The library has stood for more than 300 years now. It has survived wars, political upheavals, the transition from Greek rule to Roman occupation. The scrolls continue to accumulate. The scholars continue to arrive. And among them, teaching in the halls of the Mausian, is a man whose name will echo through the ages. His name is Heron. Some call him Hero. He lived and worked in Alexandria, probably during the 1st or 2nd century CE, and has been described as the greatest experimentalist of antiquity. Heron is different from many of the other scholars we have met. While Euclid loved pure mathematics, while Eratosthenes measured the earth from his desk, Heron wants to build things. He wants to take the principles of geometry and physics and turn them into machines. Real devices that move, that work, that accomplish tasks or simply inspire wonder. Imagine him now in his workshop, attached to the Mausian. The room smells of oil and metal, wood shavings and hot wax. On benches lie gears and wheels, bronze fittings, lengths of pipe. Heron stands at a table, sketching a design on papyrus. His hands are not just the hands of a scholar, they are calloused, skilled. He can both imagine and create. He published descriptions of machines working on air, steam, or water pressure, including the hydraulis or water organ. But his most famous invention, the one that will captivate imaginations for centuries, is something he calls an eolipile. Picture it. A hollow sphere mounted so it could turn on a pair of hollow tubes that provided steam to the sphere from a cauldron. The steam escaped from the sphere through bent tubes projecting from its equator, causing the sphere to revolve. The eolipile is the first known device to transform steam into rotary motion. A steam engine, 17 centuries before the Industrial Revolution. But Heron does not see it as something to power mills or factories. To him, it is a demonstration, a wonder, a way to show his students the principles of pneumatics. The air and steam, when heated, create pressure. When released, they create motion. The universe operates by natural laws, and those laws can be harnessed. He creates other marvels too. A coin-operated machine that dispensed holy water when a coin was introduced via a slot. When the coin was deposited, it fell upon a pan attached to a lever which opened a valve, letting water flow out until the coin fell off and a counterweight snapped the lever back. The world's first vending machine, used in temples to dispense sacred water to worshippers. He designs mechanisms for the Greek theatre, including an entirely mechanical puppet play almost 10 minutes long, powered by a system of ropes, knots, and simple machines operated by a rotating cylindrical cogwheel, with the sound of thunder produced by the mechanically timed dropping of metal balls onto a hidden drum. He invents automatically opening temple doors, powered by a fire altar and a hydraulic system. By lighting a fire above ground in an altar, heat would build up pressure in a vessel beneath the temple, pushing liquid through a hose into another vessel connected to the door posts. The added weight would pull ropes attached to the doors, opening them seemingly by magic. To those who witness these inventions, to the people of Alexandria who see temple doors open without human hands, who watch puppets perform entire plays, who receive holy water from a bronze machine, it must seem like magic. But Heron knows it is not magic. It is understanding. It is the application of knowledge found in the library's scrolls, in the works of Archimedes and others, brought to life through bronze and steam and clever engineering. He writes extensively, creating works like Pneumatica, which describes apparatus for natural magic, and Mechanica, which presents engineering principles, methods for lifting heavy objects, and how to calculate the center of gravity for various shapes. His work will survive. Centuries from now, after the library has fallen, after Alexandria has faded, Heron's treatises will be copied by Arab scholars, translated into Latin, studied by Renaissance engineers. His ideas will help spark the age of machines. But that is far in the future. For now, he is simply a teacher, a builder, a man who believes that knowledge should not merely be contemplated but used. Let us leave Heron to his workshop, leave him to his sketches and gears. Let us drift forward now, forward through centuries, through difficult times. Times when the library faces challenges, when the city grows divided, when the old ways give ground to the new. We arrive in the late 4th century, perhaps the early 5th. Alexandria is changed. It is now part of the Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. Christianity has risen. The old gods of Greece and Egypt, Zeus and Horus, Athena and Isis, are no longer worshipped openly. The temples are being closed, sometimes destroyed. In this time of transformation, of tension between old and new, there lives a woman whose brilliance shines like a beacon. Her name is Hypatia. She was born around 350 to 370 CE and lived in Alexandria during the Eastern Roman period. She is the daughter of Theon of Alexandria, himself a mathematician and astronomer and the last attested member of the Alexandrian Museum. Theon raises his daughter not as daughters were typically raised. He teaches her mathematics, astronomy, philosophy. He trains her mind as he would train the mind of any promising student. And Hypatia, brilliant Hypatia, surpasses even her father's considerable abilities. Imagine her now, a woman in her 30s or 40s, walking through the streets of Alexandria. She is described as a charismatic teacher. She wears the robes of a philosopher, the tribon, a simple cloak that marks her profession. In a time when women rarely held public positions, when they were expected to remain in domestic spheres, Hypatia lectures publicly. She teaches. She writes. She wrote a commentary on Diophantus's 13-volume Arithmetica and another commentary on Apollonius of Perga's treatise on conic sections. She continues the work her father began, preserving and expanding upon the mathematical heritage of Greece. Students come from across the empire to learn from her. Among her pupils are many prominent Christians, including Synesius of Cyrene, who later became the bishop of Ptolemy. Letters he wrote to Hypatia have been preserved, showing someone filled with admiration and reverence for her learning and scientific abilities. She teaches students how to use an astrolabe, a portable device that measured the angle between the horizon and a star or planet, helping sailors figure out both the time of day and their location on the ocean. She teaches Neoplatonic philosophy, the belief that there is an ultimate reality beyond ordinary perception, that the purpose of life is to seek understanding, to move closer to truth through reason and contemplation. To her Christian students and her pagan students alike, she offers the same gift, the gift of clear thinking, of mathematical precision, of philosophical depth. But these are difficult times. Alexandria is divided by religious conflict. Christians, Jews, pagans, all compete for influence. Violence erupts in the streets. The bishop Cyril and the Roman prefect Orestes struggle for power. And Hypatia, friend to Orestes, teacher of both pagans and Christians, brilliant and independent, becomes a symbol. To some, she represents learning and wisdom. To others, she represents the old ways, paganism, a threat to the new Christian order. The details of her final day vary in different accounts, but all agree on the tragedy. In March of 415 CE, Hypatia was brutally murdered by a mob of Christian fanatics. They pulled her from her carriage on a street in Alexandria, dragged her to a church, and killed her. The news sends shockwaves through the empire. A philosopher, a teacher, a woman of learning, struck down by a mob. For centuries, scholars had been protected, respected. This is something new, something terrible. But let us not dwell in that darkness. Instead, let us remember Hypatia as she lived, walking through the streets of Alexandria with confidence, teaching in the halls that once housed Euclid and Eratosthenes, unrolling scrolls in the library, studying the works of those who came before, adding her own insights, her own commentaries. A woman who refused to be limited by the expectations of her time. A mind that burned bright with curiosity and understanding. She is, in many ways, one of the last great scholars of ancient Alexandria. The library itself, though we cannot know its exact fate, is in decline. The great Mausoleum that once housed hundreds of scholars, that once boasted hundreds of thousands of scrolls, is fading. Some scrolls have been lost to fire, some to decay, some to simple neglect. The Golden Age is ending. But the knowledge does not die entirely. Even as Alexandria declines, even as the library shrinks, copies of texts are made. Scrolls are carried to other cities, to Constantinople, to monasteries in Egypt and Syria. Arab scholars will preserve much of what might have been lost. The thread of knowledge, once so concentrated here in Alexandria, spreads outward. It scatters like seeds on the wind. Some will be lost. But others will take root elsewhere. They will grow. They will bloom. They will eventually return to nourish future generations. Rest now, traveler. We have walked with Heron through his workshop of wonders. We have sat in Hypatia's lectures, listened to her explain the movements of the stars, the properties of conic sections. We have witnessed brilliance, and tragedy, and the eternal human drive to understand. The library gave these souls something precious. It gave them access to the accumulated wisdom of centuries. It gave them the works of Euclid and Archimedes, Apollonius and Diophantus. It gave them a foundation on which to build. And they, in turn, added to that foundation. They built machines. They wrote commentaries. They taught students. They passed the torch forward. This is the true legacy of the library. Not just the scrolls on the shelves, but what those scrolls inspired. The questions they provoked. The discoveries they enabled. The minds they awakened. Chapter 5. The Daughter Library. Welcome to the streets of ancient Alexandria. Let your breath settle. Let your thoughts grow quiet, as we walk together through the city, away from the royal quarter, toward a different hill, a different temple, a different library. You have walked the marble halls of the great Mausian. You have met the scholars who studied there. But Alexandria's hunger for knowledge, its devotion to learning, could not be contained in just one place. Now, we visit what has been called the Daughter Library, a sanctuary built on a hill overlooking the city, dedicated to a god who is neither fully Greek nor fully Egyptian, but something new. Something born of Alexandria itself. We begin in the district called Rakotes, the oldest part of Alexandria. This was once a small Egyptian fishing village before Alexander scattered his grain upon the shore. Even now, centuries after the city's founding, Rakotes remains more Egyptian than Greek. The streets are narrower here. The language in the markets is more often Egyptian than Greek. The old ways persist. And rising above this ancient quarter, dominating the skyline, is a temple built upon a rocky hill. The Serapeum, built during the reign of Ptolemy III Euergetes, between 246 and 222 BCE. A sanctuary dedicated to Serapis, a god created specifically for this city, for this moment in history. To reach the temple, you must climb a monumental stairway, 100 steps or more, approaching from the side rather than along the main axis. It is a deliberate design. The climb is meant to lift you, to elevate you, to separate you from the ordinary world below. With each step, the harbor spreads out beneath you. The city unfolds. The Mediterranean shimmers in the distance. You are rising, literally and spiritually, toward something sacred. At the top, you enter a vast courtyard. Columns surround you, creating shaded walkways. The temple itself rises before you. Impressive, beautiful, combining the best of Egyptian grandeur and Greek proportion. But who is this god Serapis? Why does he command such devotion? Why does he have temples throughout the empire? Serapis is a syncretic deity, created under Ptolemy Isota to unify Greek and Egyptian subjects. His name comes from combining Osiris and Apis, two Egyptian deities already worshipped together as one. But the Ptolemies went further. They added aspects of Zeus, Helios, Dionysus, Hades, and Asclepius, creating a god who embodied divine majesty, the sun, fertility, the underworld, and afterlife, as well as healing. Imagine the statue that stands within the temple. Serapis appears as a robed and bearded figure, regally enthroned, his right hand resting on Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guards the underworld, while his left holds an upraised scepter. On his head sits a modius, a grain measure, symbolizing abundance and fertility. He looks Greek, but he carries Egyptian meanings. He is Hades, but also Osiris. He is a bridge, a meeting point, a god for a city where cultures blend like colors in water. And the people, both Greeks and Egyptians, embrace him. They come to his temple seeking healing. They come seeking guidance. They come to participate in mysteries, sacred rituals performed in underground galleries beneath the temple. They come to dream, for worshippers would sleep near the statue of Serapis hoping to receive a dream message, a practice that resembled Greek healing cults but had long existed in Egyptian temples. And they come, scholars and seekers, for another reason. Within the temple complex, there is a library. Within the colonnaded walkways surrounding the temple sanctuary, there are rooms containing books, possibly duplicates from the Great Library, available for study by the public. This is something different from the Mausian. The Mausian is for scholars, for those who live and work there. But the Serapeum Library is more accessible, more open. A place where any educated person, any curious soul, can come to read, to learn. The earliest reference to the library comes from Tertullian, who around 197 CE remarked that at the Temple of Serapis, the libraries of Ptolemy could be seen, with Hebrew and other texts preserved there. By this time, centuries after the Serapeum's founding, the library has become an important repository of knowledge. Walk with me now through these rooms. The light here is different from the Mausian. Softer perhaps. More filtered. The scrolls rest in their cubbies, papyrus and parchment, texts in Greek and Egyptian and Hebrew. Philosophy and poetry. Medicine and mathematics. History and astronomy. A merchant sits reading a treatise on navigation. A physician studies an Egyptian medical text. A young student copies passages from Plato. They are not resident scholars. They have not been granted royal patronage. They are simply citizens of Alexandria, exercising their right to knowledge, coming to drink from this fountain of wisdom. The Serapeum Library becomes especially important as time passes. There are hints, suggestions in ancient sources, that portions of the main library were damaged or destroyed at various points. Perhaps during Julius Caesar's Alexandrian War in 47 BCE when fires spread through parts of the city. Perhaps during other conflicts. The details are murky, lost to history. But the Serapeum was regarded as having taken its place as the main repository of books and scrolls after damage to the larger library. So now there are two hearts of learning in Alexandria. The Mausian in the royal quarter, more exclusive, more focused on advanced scholarship, and the Serapeum on its hill in Rakotes, more public, more accessible. Together they hold hundreds of thousands of texts. Together they preserve the intellectual heritage of the ancient world. Rest here for a moment. Sit in one of the reading rooms. Feel the cool stone beneath you. Hear the distant murmur of the city below. Smell the papyrus, the oil from the lamps. Watch a scholar unfurl a scroll, begin to read, lose himself in words written centuries ago by someone long dead, but whose thoughts live on. This is the magic of writing. This is the miracle of libraries. The dead speak to the living. Knowledge crosses generations like a river flowing endlessly forward. But nothing lasts forever. Not even places built for eternity. The Roman Empire has changed. In 391 CE, Emperor Theodosius I issued a decree that declared no one should go to sanctuaries or walk through temples. Christianity is now the official religion of the empire. The old gods are forbidden. The old ways are condemned. In Alexandria, tensions have been building. Bishop Theophilus, zealous, uncompromising, has been converting pagan temples into churches, destroying statues, mocking the old religions. When he begins to displace sacred objects from pagan temples publicly, to ridicule them, the pagans of Alexandria cannot remain silent. Violence erupts. Pagans and Christians clash in the streets. Pagans seize the Serapeum, fortifying themselves within its walls, making their stand. For a moment, the ancient temple becomes a fortress, the last stronghold of the old gods, the place where those who still believe make their defiant stand. But they cannot hold. In 391 CE, the Temple of Serapis was torn down, either destroyed by a Christian mob or by Roman soldiers following orders from Christian authorities. The great statue of Serapis is pulled down. Broken. Some accounts say it was burned in the amphitheater as a final act of triumph over paganism. And what of the library? What of those rooms filled with scrolls? What of the books and texts? The accumulated wisdom? The sources are silent on specifics. Some scrolls may have been saved. Some may have been carried away. Some may have burned. We cannot know for certain. But the Serapeum as a center of learning, as a sanctuary of knowledge, comes to an end. The building is converted into a church, or demolished entirely. The details vary in different accounts. But the result is the same. The daughter library is gone. Let us sit together in the quiet that follows. Not in despair, but in reflection. For while the building fell, while the scrolls were scattered or destroyed, the idea, the dream, that persists. Knowledge is more resilient than stone. Wisdom is harder to destroy than papyrus. The scholars who studied at the Serapeum, who read its texts, who copied its manuscripts, they carried what they learned with them. Some texts were preserved. Some ideas survived. The river of knowledge, though diverted, continued to flow. In the centuries to come, scholars in Constantinople will preserve Greek texts. Monks in monasteries will copy ancient works. Arab scholars will translate and study what was saved. The Renaissance will rediscover what Alexandria knew. The thread is never completely broken. The light is never entirely extinguished. And more than this, the very idea of a public library, a place where knowledge is available to all who seek it, this idea survives. It lives in every library built since. In every archive. In every institution dedicated to preserving and sharing human knowledge. The Serapeum may have fallen, but its purpose, its mission, continues in thousands of libraries across the world. Chapter 6. The Eternal Library. What happened to the library? Where did it go? And more importantly, what does it mean for us today? The question haunts us across the ages. Who destroyed the Library of Alexandria? It seems such a simple question. Surely there must be a villain. Surely there must be a single moment, a single fire, a single act of violence that ended this wonder of the ancient world. But history, true history, is rarely so simple. And the truth about the library's fate is far more complex, and perhaps more sad, than any dramatic tale of destruction. Let us examine the evidence, piece by piece, like scholars in the reading room. The first suspect is Julius Caesar. In 48 BCE, he found himself trapped in Alexandria, besieged by Egyptian forces. To save himself, he ordered that enemy ships in the harbor be set on fire. The flames spread beyond his control, reaching the city, reaching the docks. Ancient historians differ on what burned. Some writers claim the fire destroyed the library. Others say it damaged warehouses near the harbor that may have held books. Caesar himself writes of starting the fire but says nothing of destroying the library. A strange silence, if he had truly destroyed the greatest collection of knowledge in the world. But here is what we know. The geographer Strabo visited Alexandria around 20 BCE, several decades after Caesar's fire, and speaks of the Mauseon, the research complex that housed the library. He describes it as still standing, still functioning, though perhaps diminished from its former glory. So if Caesar's fire damaged the collection, it did not destroy it entirely. Time passes. Decades become centuries. The library fades from the historical record. References become fewer. The silence grows. In the year 270 CE, the Emperor Aurelian fought fierce battles in Alexandria against forces from Palmyra. Much of the city was destroyed in the fighting, including the royal quarter where the original library stood. By this time, scholars suggest, little remained of the great institution anyway. The glorious days had long passed. Then comes 391 CE and the destruction of the Serapeum, the daughter library on the hill. As we witnessed in our last chapter, the temple was torn down, converted to a church or destroyed entirely. What scrolls remained there, if any remained, were lost in the chaos. And later still, in 640 CE, Alexandria falls to Arab forces. Centuries afterward, a story emerges. The conquering general asks the caliph what to do with the library's books. The caliph reportedly replies that if the books agree with the Quran, they are unnecessary, and if they contradict it, they are heresy. Either way, burn them. The story claims the books fueled the bathhouses of Alexandria for 6 months. It is a dramatic tale. But modern scholars believe it to be exactly that, a tale. A story invented centuries later, perhaps to justify other book burnings, perhaps as propaganda. There is no contemporary evidence for this burning. No witnesses. No accounts written anywhere near the time it supposedly happened. The story appears first in texts written 600 years after the alleged event. So what really happened? Where did the library go? Rest here for a moment. Breathe. The answer is both simpler and sadder than we might wish. The library did not die in a single catastrophic fire. It faded. It declined. It was neglected. Over centuries, the royal funding dried up. The scholars left. The scrolls, precious papyrus, deteriorated in the humid Mediterranean climate. Some were lost to minor fires. Some to floods. Some simply crumbled into dust. Some were copied and carried away to other cities. The collection scattered, diminished, disappeared, not with a dramatic ending but with a slow, inevitable, quiet decline. By the time of the great disasters, Caesar's fire, Aurelian's war, the destruction of the Serapeum, there may have been little left to destroy. The Golden Age had ended long before. The dream had already faded. It is not the ending we want. We want villains. We want to point and say they did this. We want a moment to mourn. But perhaps the truth is more important than the story we wish were true. The library was lost not through malice but through the simple passage of time. Through changes in politics and funding. Through shifts in what society valued. Through the fragility of papyrus and ink. Through the everyday neglect that happens when no one remembers to care. And yet, not everything was lost. Some texts were copied before the originals decayed. Some manuscripts were carried to Constantinople, to monasteries in the desert, to libraries in Damascus and Baghdad. Arab scholars translated Greek works into Arabic, preserving them through the Dark Ages. Byzantine scribes copied ancient texts. Renaissance humanists rediscovered what had been saved. The thread was frayed, but never completely broken. We still read Euclid. We still study Eratosthenes. We still know of Aristarchus and his radical theory. We still learn from what Alexandria taught. Not everything survived. We have lost so much, but we have kept enough. Enough to remember. Enough to build upon. Let us move forward now, gently, through time. Let us arrive in the present day. Let us stand once more on the shores of Alexandria. The ancient library is gone. The Mausian has vanished without a trace. The Serapeum is rubble beneath modern streets. But look, do you see? Rising from the earth near where the ancient library once stood, a new structure. A building of glass and steel and granite. A massive tilting disc, like a sun rising from the Mediterranean. On October 16, 2002, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina opened its doors. A modern library. A memorial. A revival. A promise that the dream need not die. The building is magnificent in its own right. Designed by a Norwegian architecture firm called Snøhetta, it features a distinctive circular, tilting form reminiscent of the sun. The exterior walls are carved with symbols and letters from every known writing system, over 4,000 unique characters representing more than 120 different scripts. The universal language of humanity expressed in stone. Inside, the main reading room can hold 8 million books and seat 2,500 readers. Natural light floods through windows designed to protect the collection while illuminating the space. There are museums, a planetarium, research centers, laboratories for manuscript restoration. Everything the ancient library was, and more. Reimagined for our time. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina is not a replacement for what was lost. Nothing could replace that. But it is a continuation. An acknowledgement. A statement that Alexandria still values knowledge, still welcomes scholars, still believes in the power of books and learning to transform the world. Students come here from across Egypt and beyond. Researchers conduct their work in its halls. Children visit the planetarium and learn about the stars. The ancient dream lives again, different, modern, but still recognizably the same dream that Ptolemy dreamed 23 centuries ago. Rest now, dear traveler. Our journey is nearly complete. You have walked the marble halls of the ancient Mausian. You have met the great minds who shaped human understanding. You have witnessed the rise and the slow decline. You have seen how knowledge persists even when buildings fall. What does the Library of Alexandria mean to us today, here, now, in our own time? It means that knowledge is precious. That learning must be protected. That what one generation builds, the next must maintain, or it will be lost. It means that libraries are not merely buildings but living institutions that require constant care, constant funding, constant attention. The moment we stop caring, the moment we stop supporting, the slow decline begins. But it also means something else. Something hopeful. It means that knowledge is resilient. That ideas are harder to destroy than stone. That wisdom, once discovered, has a way of surviving. Even when scrolls burn, even when libraries fall, even when civilizations collapse, the knowledge finds a way. Through copies. Through translation. Through the dedication of those who believe it matters. Every library you enter, you carry forward the dream of Alexandria. Every book you read, you honor those ancient scholars. Every question you ask, you join that eternal conversation that began in the reading rooms of the Mausian and continues still. Wherever curious minds gather, wherever knowledge is valued, wherever learning is shared. The Library of Alexandria is not truly lost. It lives on. In every library. In every school. In every person who chooses to learn rather than remain ignorant. Who chooses to question rather than accept without thinking. Who chooses to preserve rather than let knowledge fade away. You are the Library of Alexandria. Your mind, your curiosity, your willingness to learn, these are the scrolls. These are the treasures. The building in Egypt may be gone, but the spirit, the purpose, the dream, these endure in you. So rest now, rest deeply, knowing that you are part of an ancient tradition. A tradition of learning, of questioning, of seeking to understand. From the scholars who walked those marble halls 2,000 years ago, to you, lying here now, about to drift into sleep, the thread connects. The light passes forward. Dream tonight of libraries, of scrolls and books, of minds reaching across centuries to share what they have learned. Dream of questions that have no easy answers. Dream of the joy of discovery. Dream of that moment when understanding finally dawns, when the pieces fall into place, when something that was mysterious becomes clear. And know, truly know, that every time you seek to learn, every time you open a book, every time you ask why or how, you rebuild Alexandria. You restore the library. You keep the dream alive. The ancient scholars would be proud of you. Euclid would smile at your persistence. Eratosthenes would celebrate your curiosity. Hypatia would encourage you to think boldly. Heron would marvel at the machines you take for granted. They would see in you, in all of us who still value learning, the continuation of everything they worked for. Sleep now, traveler. Sleep deeply and well. You have walked through centuries. You have stood in the greatest library the ancient world knew. You have witnessed its glory and its loss. And you have discovered that it was never truly lost at all, because the dream lives on, in libraries new and old, in schools and universities, in anyone who chooses wisdom over ignorance. The Library of Alexandria endures. Not in stone, but in spirit. Not in one place, but everywhere knowledge is valued. Not in the past, but here, now, in you. Rest peacefully, dreamer. When you wake, you will carry with you a piece of Alexandria's light. And that light, passed from generation to generation, from ancient scholars to you, will never be extinguished as long as there are those who care to keep it burning. Until we meet again, may your dreams be filled with wonder. May your rest be deep and healing. May you wake with questions worth asking and the courage to seek their answers. Sleep well, Dear traveler, sleep well. And thank you for walking with me through the Library of Alexandria, for remembering what was, for believing in what could be, for being part of the eternal chain of learning that stretches from the ancient world to tomorrow. Good night.